Hey everybody, welcome to Wednesday. I admit I'm only making a video today mostly to let it be known that people flinging verbal abuse at me or like written abuse on Twitter will not shut me up. And I think instead of trying to deal with any sort of issue or something like that today, because nerves are really, really raw, I want to kind of do uh, morale boost sounds so arrogant, but um, kind of a reminder that we have more in common that separates us, kind of thing. Everybody's having a rough go of it right now. I've heard from a lot of people that you know, their place of work had a rock thrown through the window, or there were smashed up windows in the area they lived in. Um, and it's tough. It's disturbing. It's rattling. People don't feel centered right now, and it's easy to say kind of keep calm and carry on, but the reason that became sort of a wartime propaganda mantra was because it's a goal, but people need to sort of be told the mantra because it's not natural. And there's a lot of anger out there. And one of the things I have noticed in the last 10 or so years with the way kind of progressive movements have gone is they've gone from knowing where there is, and I shouldn't say just progressives, this is for everybody now. Everybody shuts people down because they're angry. And it's interesting because I went from a paradigm where that was considered tone policing to the very same people who were like, I will not be tone policed, are tone policing everyone else. And there's a difference between someone just not putting together an argument, not having anything to say that is furthering the conversation, furthering the dialogue at all, and saying it in a way that you find unpleasant. Those are profoundly different things. And I find that a lot of people who are in positions of power and who really have nothing to say are shutting down people with less power, but they have something very meaningful to add to the dialogue. And I don't know when people in positions of authority lost the ability to, well, I do. I don't know when it happened, but I know how it happened. It went it when sort of tech culture became the dominant place that made the world a better place, you know, that thing they made fun of in Silicon Valley, a particular way of speaking took over. And, you know, I come from the media where people yell a lot and people yell at each other a lot. And you know the difference between somebody who's yelling at you because you're about to get hit by something dangerous and somebody who's yelling at you because they're a bully. Um, but tech is very, okay, yeah. And they're hitting each other in their own ways. There's a ton of backstabbing and nastiness that goes on, but it's this kind of whiter than white nicety that I talked about some yesterday. Um, this isn't good. I've seen it happening more and more and more in gaming. I'm not going to talk to you if you're yelling at me. You can't get through life and get anything done if you're unwilling to talk to somebody just because they are angry. And if you're unwilling to talk to somebody because they are angry, that might be a sign that you're not in touch with your own emotions and you don't realize how angry you are, right? Because what does someone anger have to do with you, right? Just because somebody else is losing control doesn't mean that you have to as well. But then there's the fact that there's ways of being angry that don't involve losing control. You can channel anger and you can make it productive, or you can let it run wild and make it destructive. And what we're watching right now is what happens when there are no productive channels for anger. They become destructive channels for anger. And we saw this happen in video games 2014, 2015. People weren't getting anywhere with their grievances. They weren't feeling heard. And so basically what happened is there was an online riot that lasted for a year and a half. Essentially, it started in, well, maybe more like 9 months. It spilled over from 2014 into 2015, came back again at the anniversary of the whole thing kicking up. And I've talked about this before. There's a big difference between what's morally right and what's understandable. And people can only feel kept down. People can only feel squashed for so long before they start screaming and before they start breaking stuff. And I think we, to our detriment, have decided artificially who deserves to be able to scream and who doesn't. And we've created a lot of artificial barriers between each other. And the truth is, and this is backed up by science, people have more that is similar than we are different. We may not have the same understanding of things. We may not have the same information. We may not be coming from things from the same place. But the essential things we want out of life, broad strokes, are the same. And one of the big things that people need is a feeling of acceptance. And that's harder and harder to get as corporations get bigger and cities get bigger and, everything, online networks get bigger, and we just get consumed by these massive, massive, massive things that are so driven by rules that they drain the soul. And the really compelling thing for me is before the whole coronavirus thing hit. Yeah, remember that? Seems so long ago. There was a lot of wealth being generated. We live in very rich times. It's not distributed in a way that indicates a truly functioning system. And there was this interesting discussion on Twitch about what motivates people and the fact that people who have, their needs met aren't likely to be as greedy, aren't likely to take to the streets and smash stuff up. Now, the truth is there is that portion of the population that is, they have personality disorders, and no matter how comfortable they are, they just have this need to wreck shit. But then there are a lot of people who are just walking around in pain. I can count on one hand how many people I am aware of who seem content. And I am very grateful for those people because they are very good examples of how to be human. They maintain my belief that the human race is just inherently good and that these skills are things that we all can develop. I think people who are content, and I've gotten a lot better at it than I was, but I know people who are far better at it than me. I think people that are content have something to teach the rest of us that is very, very profound, but they're content. So they don't have any motivation to stick themselves out there. They're happy, you know. It's not that they're rich, and it's not that they're famous, and it's not that they have anything the rest of us don't. They're just content with what they have. And I think everybody could use a bit more of that. And the question is, why don't we have it? And because the truth is, you know, let's face it, we don't live in a culture that accepts enough. It's this ongoing thing of, if you're not number one, you're nothing. And that's, you know, that's not good for a culture long term. We're hitting a crossroads in terms of society, and it's not just the US, it's affecting the world. It's one of these inflection points in history where nobody's quite sure where things are going to go from here. You know, I don't think, no matter what happens, things are just going to go back to being the same. You could feel it sometimes if you've been through it enough. The question is, what different are we going to collectively choose? And on a broad scale, us individual people can't do anything about that. Me, I have something of a platform. I can do something of that. But you regular people out there just playing video games, you should not feel responsible for the broad strokes path that the world takes. What you have control over is your own life and the people you surround yourself with and the choices you make. And this is why I think I enjoy the gaming community so much. Gamers are people who are extremely aware of choice and what it means and how they work and what's a meaningful choice and what's an illusion of choice. And so we have a unique skill set that is going to allow us to come out of whatever is to come relatively okay, as long as we don't let other crap separate us. And I think a lot of people are stressed and they're tired. I know I am. They're scared and they're losing hope. Because it's hard to look out and see things burning and people screaming and, you know, recognizable US cities that look like war zones and you know, businesses getting looted and how is this hope? And that's where you sort of look back and realize that, you know, we've been through riots before. We've been through, in my lifetime, I remember the riots after the Rodney King verdict. We have to make sure that the rebuilding is figurative and for lack of a better term, spiritual, as well as just physical. Like, you can rebuild a store, but, you know, you can't rebuild the damage certain things do to a person in the same way. It's relatively easy to fix a store and replace stock and all that stuff. The breakdown of bonds between people is a much more difficult thing to repair. And there are a lot of people out there right now exploiting the fact that people feel very much alone. I mean, exploiting people's loneliness and sense of powerness is how all extremists recruit people. And sometimes it's just about who gets to them first, you know? Um, Fortunately with gaming, there's ways that people can feel not alone in a way that doesn't really hurt anybody. And I think what happened in like 2014, 2015, when they were accused of being harmful and the most dangerous harassers on the internet and all that stuff, I think that broke a lot of people because of that. Because, it I see it over and over and over again. People who just don't have the vocabulary, don't know how to articulate their pain. And so they grasp onto something. And it sounds absurd because it kind of is. But that's just because they're looking for a tangible detail to put overwhelming feelings. And they're just dismissed, you know? And I don't think it matters why you dismiss a person in pain. Those are details, those are semantics. The desire to dismiss a person who is in pain, that lack of compassion, that is what we really have to address. And some people are better at it than others. The partisanship that has gripped the world in the last 20, 30 years has not helped. We are a society that has forgotten how to forgive collectively. And that is a skill we're going to have to relearn going forward. Because it can't get any worse without something just completely rupturing, right? It's got to get better from here. And it may coast along for a while, but then it'll get better. We're approaching rock bottom with the current paradigm. We have a bit more to fall, but it's getting very close. I admit part of the reason I almost didn't put up a video today is because I'll make a video. It's like what happened to me Sunday night. I make a video. Everything seems kind of stable during the day, and then shit goes sideways at night, right? And we can't predict what insane, crazy thing is going to happen. By the time I stop recording and set it to upload and go make dinner, and then, oh my God, another city's on fire, and, that kind of stuff. But the fundamentals don't change, right? The fundamentals of hurt don't change. The fundamentals of healing don't change. And it doesn't matter if somebody's being dismissed because of the hobby they enjoy or the color of their skin. It is still an artificial dismissal. We all talk about people being judged not by their immutable characteristics or by what they like to do, but by the caliber of their character and the caliber of their ideas. But that's something that has to be given, not just taken. Like, you have to be a part of that. If you're shutting down people because of heuristics and tautologies and semantics and all that stuff, if you're just looking for easy reasons to not have to give somebody a hearing, why do you expect anybody else to be better? If it's too hard for you, or if it's not worth it for you, why would you expect more from somebody else? And that's sort of the disconnect. Everything is you first. In this paradigm of oppression that we live in, that everyone's competing to show that they have it the worst off. It's this zero-sum game of, well, it can only be one person who matters, one type of person who matters at any given time. So I have to dismiss everybody else and show that my grievance is the most important, because every human being wants to matter. And if we teach in any way that some humans are just more human than others, you're always going to have somebody who's aggrieved enough to start breaking something, either literally or figuratively, whether that's some sort of, uprising on the internet or an uprising in the streets of major US cities. The fundamental mechanics of that are no different. And I'm one of the few people with a platform right now who can be morally consistent and support the basic cause of the people doing the protesting for civil rights right now. I can say I'm not gonna paint all those protesters with the same brush as the bad actors, right? But everybody else in gaming right now, if you go, oh well, it's only some people, not all, well, go back and look at what you said in 2014, 2015, and think about where your shorthands went in there when you painted everybody with the same brush, instead of recognizing that all movements who sort of form organically this way are going to have bad actors, and then the vast majority, the majority of people are just there because they're upset and they want someone to hear them. And that was my big concern back then. That's my big concern now. That people who claim to be supportive, to be allies, are going to pull a move like the religious leaders to which Martin Luther King wrote letter from a Birmingham jail. You hear that letter quoted all the time, but the context of it tends to get lost. And the context of it was that he was appealing to faith leaders of multiple faiths who supported him in theory, but then went and said, oh, he's too radical to cover their own asses. And it was because he got arrested. And so that was some big violation of a moral taboo, even though getting arrested is part of the civil disobedience playbook that Martin Luther King Jr. was following. And he was saying, we can't just rely on laws. We can't just say, oh, well, it's illegal, therefore it's bad. If a law is unjust, it must be defied. Who defines what is too radical? Just because something makes you uncomfortable doesn't mean it's a radical idea. It may be the truth of it that you're reacting to, because if you see the truth in it, then you might have to change something. And a lot of people are really not good at change because a lot of people do not have the self-esteem and the self-compassion to move forward in changed ways. Most people would rather be consistent than better. And that's a very difficult thing to realize about humanity. But, the nice thing about letter from a Birmingham jail and what's going on right now is you're seeing a lot of faith leaders make the other choice this time. And that's an indication that collectively things have gotten a little bit better. And I'm hoping that in gaming we'll see the same thing. This is my hope. This is my hope going forward. That people who consider themselves progressive after this will rethink the reasons they dismiss people, rethink the reasons they think some people have a voice and some people don't. Or they're going to be identified for the false progressives that they truly are. And will finally be able to get some people in who are actually interested in creating a true community where everybody who just wants to be cool and play games is welcome. Not necessarily feels welcome, but they are welcome. You cannot do anything about the baggage some people bring to the table. That's my hope. It's not a prediction. It's a hope. We need hope because tells us what to strive for. Hope tells us what direction is going to inform our actions going forward. Without hope, you have no direction. Without direction, you're just casting adrift. When you're cast adrift, you can, bump into things and smash them up. And it just sort of becomes this ongoing cascade of entropy. Hope allows us the chance to build something better. Hope means that this isn't all going to be for nothing. And I mean, the stuff out of 2014 and 2015, I mean, I met some really great people through it, and they've been really super supportive. And believe it or not, they were on both sides of the conflict. A lot of people who initially thought I was the enemy are now big supporters of mine. That's progress, right? Sure, it's not millions of people, but it's something. It's people who managed to come together because they bothered to talk. That's a really positive start. And I believe if 2 people can do something, then 4 people can do something. And if 4 people can do something, 12 people can do something. And if 12 people can do something, 100 people can do something. And if 100 people can do something, then 1,000,000 people can do something, and so on and so forth. And it doesn't mean they will. It just means it's possible. And that's precisely why I made a video today, and I precisely why people will not shut me up with psychological abuse. Because if I quit, if I let them see they can get to me that way, they're gonna keep doing it. And what I want to accomplish is just too important to give them that power over me. So I hope you guys understand. I hope this gives you a bit of something to cling to as well. Because these are tough times. This is no joke. Don't let anybody gaslight you. These are tough times for everybody to be living through right now. People younger than 30 have never seen anything like this because they're too young to, even 9/11 wasn't this, for people who have lived through it, we can say we do get through this. And things are always a little bit better. Maybe not in the short term, but definitely in the long term. So I hope that just gives people a bit of hope. I hope my hope spreads to you. So I didn't even do the Patreon thing yet. I'll throw it on at the end, even though this seems weird. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks so much for watching, and please take care of yourself.